He was the most hated man in Jericho, not because he was violent, not because he was cruel in ways that left visible marks. He was hated because of something quieter and more corrosive than violence. He had taken from people who trusted systems they couldn't control, and he had grown rich doing it. He knew exactly what he was. He had been doing it long enough that the knowledge had settled into something he had learned to live with. The fine house, the full table, the weight of money that other people's labor had produced, redirected through the machinery of Roman taxation and personal greed into his own account. He had everything. And something was so empty that when a traveling rabbi came through Jericho, a man he had only heard about, a man surrounded by crowds that would not part for someone like him, Zacchaeus climbed a tree, a wealthy, powerful, despised tax collector, climbing a tree like a child just to see. What happened next did not just change his life. It changed his entire relationship with money, with the people he had wronged, and with the God he had been avoiding for years. And what Zacchaeus did the day after he met Jesus is the most radical, most practical, most financially specific act of repentance in the entire New Testament. By the end of this video, you will understand what true financial conversion looks like. Not just giving more, not just feeling sorry, but the specific, costly, irreversible decision to make right what was wrong, and what that decision unlocks in a life that money has been quietly controlling. 1. The world Zacchaeus built. To understand what Zacchaeus surrendered, you have to understand what he had built. Tax collectors in first century Judea were not simply government employees doing an unpopular job. They were Jews who had purchased the right from Rome to collect taxes in their district, and who were permitted by the system itself to collect more than the official rate and keep the excess. The system was designed for exploitation, and the men who entered it knew exactly what they were entering. Zacchaeus was not a local tax collector. He was a chief tax collector, archidolones in the Greek, a word that appears only here in the entire New Testament. He was at the top of the system. He had other collectors working under him, which means the exploitation was not just his own. It was systematized, organized, franchised downward through layers of people, all profiting from the same mechanism of legalized theft. He was rich. The text says so directly. And in a context where most of the people being taxed were subsistence farmers and craftsmen, his wealth was not abstract. It had faces. It had names. It had the specific weight of knowing that the woman who sold bread in the market paid you more than she should have, and that you kept it. He was also short. The text mentions this, and it is not incidental. In the honor-shame culture of first century Palestine, a man of Zacchaeus' profession and physical stature would have been socially invisible in the worst possible way. Present but dismissed, wealthy but despised, powerful in the transaction but worthless in the community. His money had bought him everything except belonging. And Jesus was coming through Jericho. Point 2. The man in the tree and the rabbi who looked up. The crowd was thick. People pressed in from every side to see Jesus. And Zacchaeus, this wealthy, despised, powerful man, could not get through. So he ran ahead, and he climbed a sycamore tree. Ride that moment carefully, because what it reveals about the state of Zacchaeus' interior life is more important than anything the text says explicitly. Wealthy men do not climb trees in public, not in any culture, not without completely abandoning the performance of dignity that their social position requires. For Zacchaeus to climb that tree was to make himself ridiculous in front of the entire crowd. The crowd that already despised him. The crowd whose money was in his account. The crowd that would have felt a private satisfaction watching the chief tax collector perched in a tree like a desperate child. He did not care. Something in him had moved past the point where the opinions of the crowd could stop him. Something wanted to see this man badly enough that no public humiliation was too high a price. Jesus walked under the tree. He stopped, he looked up, and in a city full of faithful Jews, devout Pharisees, humble fishermen, and sincere seekers, Jesus said, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. Not, I will consider visiting you. Not, perhaps if there is time. I must." The crowd was furious. They muttered, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." The word they used was not just morally loaded. It was socially precise. Zacchaeus was not merely a man who had done wrong things. He was a man who had placed himself categorically outside the covenant community through his collaboration with Rome. For Jesus to choose his house over every other house in Jericho was a statement so deliberate and so provocative that the crowd could not absorb it quietly. But Zacchaeus came down immediately, and he welcomed Jesus gladly. What happened inside that house, the text does not record. There is no sermon described, no list of sins enumerated, no detailed theological instruction. Just Jesus in the house with the man. And something happened in that space that money had never produced and religion had never touched. 3. The declaration that cost him everything. When they came out of the house, Zacchaeus stood before Jesus and said, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Stop. Read that again. Half of everything he owned, immediately, publicly, irreversibly to the poor, and for everyone he had defrauded, 4-fold repayment. The law of Moses required repayment of stolen goods plus 20%. Zacchaeus offered 400%. He did not meet the legal minimum. He went to the maximum expression of restitution that a man in his position could offer. And then he went further. Think about what this cost him. His entire financial identity was built on accumulation. Every system he had constructed, every relationship he had leveraged, every transaction he had tilted in his favor, the net result was a fortune. And in one sentence, standing outside his own house, in front of the crowd that had hated him, he began dismantling it, voluntarily, publicly. Immediately, Jesus responded with words that should reshape everything you understand about what salvation does to a person's financial life. Today, salvation has come to this house. Not today this man has made a financial decision. Not today this man has shown admirable generosity. Today, salvation has come. The Greek word is sozo, wholeness, rescue, restoration to what was broken. And Jesus linked that wholeness directly to what Zacchaeus had just said he would do with his money. This does not mean you can buy salvation through generosity. That is not what the text says. It says that genuine encounter with Jesus produced, in Zacchaeus, a response so financially radical, so costly, so specific in its address of actual wrongs done to actual people, that Jesus identified it as evidence of salvation. The tree he had climbed was not a stunt. It was the visible sign of a hunger that the money had never fed. And what came out of that house was the proof. 4. What Zacchaeus reveals about your money. Now let's bring this story into your life, because Zacchaeus is not a historical curiosity. He is a mirror for every person who has used money as a substitute for something it was never designed to provide. The first pattern this story exposes: money that fills the account but empties the soul. Zacchaeus had accumulated everything that his culture defined as success. He was rich, he had a system, he had power within that system, and he was so hollow that he climbed a tree in public just to see a man he had never met. There is a version of financial success that does exactly this. It produces the house, the income, the portfolio, the lifestyle, and leaves the person inside it with a quiet, persistent, unnameable emptiness that more money has never been able to touch. The upgrade never quite resolves it. The next milestone never quite closes it. The number goes up and the emptiness remains. If that describes your relationship with money right now, Zacchaeus' story is telling you something specific. What you are hungry for cannot be bought. And the hunger that drove him up that tree is the same hunger that will, if you let it, drive you toward the only encounter that actually satisfies it. The second pattern: the financial life built on taking more than you should. Zacchaeus' wealth was not built on fraud in the criminal sense. It was built on a system that permitted exploitation, and he participated in it fully. In your world, this pattern has quieter expressions. The contractor who charges for hours not worked. The employee who uses company resources for personal gain. The business owner whose pricing takes advantage of customers who don't know better. The person in a position of financial authority, an executor, a trustee, a bookkeeper, who skims in ways that are technically difficult to trace. The negotiation where you had information the other party lacked and you used it entirely to your own advantage. None of these people think of themselves as Zacchaeus, but the pattern is the same. A financial life that has been quietly, systematically tilted in your favor at other people's expense. The third pattern: restitution as the missing word in Christian financial repentance. This is the pattern that most Christian financial teaching never reaches, and it is the heart of what Zacchaeus did. Most financial repentance in the church looks like this: I feel convicted about my spending. I am going to tithe more faithfully. I am going to be more generous going forward. All of these are good things. But Zacchaeus did something different. He went backward. He identified the specific people and the specific transactions where he had taken more than was right, and he offered to make it right at personal cost to those specific people. Forward generosity is easier than backward restitution. Giving to a mission organization does not undo what you took from a person. Increasing your tithe does not repair the financial damage done to a specific individual by a specific action. The question Zacchaeus forces you to ask is there anyone in your financial past who deserves more than your future generosity? Is there a person, a former business partner, a family member, an employee, a client, a customer, to whom you owe not just better behavior going forward, but actual restitution for something specific that happened? That conversation is harder than any giving plan, and it may be the most important financial step you ever take. The fourth pattern, the liberation that comes from voluntary financial surrender. Zacchaeus gave half of everything he owned, immediately, publicly. And Jesus said, "Salvation has come to this house." There is a financial principle embedded in this story that runs completely counter to everything the accumulation culture teaches. The moment of greatest financial freedom in Zacchaeus' life was not the moment he acquired the most. It was the moment he gave the most away. This is not a promise that giving makes you wealthy. It is an observation about the human soul, that the grip money has on a person is loosened not by having more of it, but by demonstrating through costly and irreversible generosity that it does not own you. The thing you are most afraid to give away is the thing that most owns you. Zacchaeus gave half of everything. Jesus called it salvation. What would the equivalent look like in your life? The fifth pattern. Encounter precedes transformation. Zacchaeus did not clean himself up before Jesus came to his house. He did not first pay back what he owed, then invite Jesus in. He did not get his financial life right and then present himself as worthy of attention. Jesus came to his house first, while he was still a tax collector, while the money was still in the account, while the crowd was still muttering outside. Transformation in Zacchaeus' financial life was not the condition for the relationship. It was the result of it. This matters enormously for anyone who has been avoiding God because their financial life is a mess, because the debt is shameful, because the secret is heavy, because the pattern has gone on long enough that presenting yourself before God feels impossible until it's fixed. Jesus looked up into the tree. He said your name. He came to your house before you had anything to show him. The financial transformation comes after the encounter, not before it. You do not have to be fixed to be found. 5 practical steps. The Zacchaeus Framework. Here is the framework. Specific, actionable. Starting this week. Step 1. Identify what money has been substituting for in your life. What is the empty space that financial accumulation has been trying to fill? Name it honestly. Status, security, control, belonging, approval. Write it down. Because the hunger Zacchaeus had was not for money, the money had never fed it. Naming what you are actually hungry for is the first step toward finding what actually satisfies it. Step 2. Take an honest inventory of financial relationships that need restitution. Think back, not forward, back. Is there a person in your financial history who received less than they were owed because of a decision you made, a transaction you tilted, a contract you interpreted in your favor, a debt you walked away from without resolution? Write the names down. This is not a guilt exercise. It is a Zacchaeus exercise. The list is the beginning of a plan. Step 3. Make one restitution contact this month. Choose the most significant name on your list. Reach out, not to relitigate the past, not to defend yourself. To say, I have been thinking about what happened between us financially, and I want to make it right. Then listen. Then do what you said. Step 4. Give something that costs you something real this month. Not the amount that is comfortable, not the amount that leaves your lifestyle unchanged. Give something that requires you to make a different choice somewhere else. To skip something, to delay something, to go without something in order to give it. The point is not the amount. The point is the loosening of the grip. Step 5. Have the encounter before you have the answers. If you have been waiting until your financial life is in order before you bring it to God, stop waiting. Bring it now, exactly as it is. The account balance, the hidden thing, the pattern you are not proud of, the debt you cannot see a way out of. Lay it all on the table the way Zacchaeus came down from that tree, without pretense, without a plan already in place, just willing to let Jesus into the house. Step 6. Write a financial testimony that tells the truth about what God has done, not a performance of blessing, not a highlight reel, a true account, where you were, what was hidden, what the encounter cost you, what it produced. Because the crowd that muttered when Jesus went to Zacchaeus' house went quiet when Zacchaeus stood up and spoke. Your honest financial testimony has the same power. It does not require you to be finished. It only requires you to be honest. The sycamore tree is not the end of this story. It is the beginning, and the beginning is always the same. Something so hungry that public dignity stops mattering. Something so empty that the accumulated money cannot fill it. Something so ready that when Jesus stops and looks up and says your name, you come down immediately. You do not have to have it together to come down from the tree. You just have to come down. If this series has been doing something in you, something about money and secrets and God and what your financial life actually reflects, there is one more video I want you to watch before you go. It is called 10 Biblical Rules for Getting Out of Debt, and it is where this series began, with a king who had everything, showed it to the wrong people, and lost everything. Watch it now, because everything this series has been building toward has a practical starting point. And that video gives you the first step. It is on screen right now.